Flight Sim crew, this is your pilot in command, Ryan, and today we are taking a look at the Cessna 150. Cessna 150 is a phenomenal aircraft, primarily used for flight training. It is a two-seater. It has less carrying capacity than the Cessna 152, which means you can't have additional passengers, and it doesn't really allow for much cargo carrying capacity as well. So, with just a couple things to go over about the Cessna 172. I'm going to go to an external view so we can take a look here. As you see, it looks very similar to the Cessna 152. It's tricycle landing gear. It has a engine, which is going to be a four-cylinder horizontally opposed piston engine, and it is capable of producing 110 horsepower. The aircraft is usually a little bit cheaper for most pilots getting into flight school than the Cessna 172, and therefore it is usually a popular choice for anyone wanting to learn aviation without breaking the bank. With that being said, let's go over just a couple more facts about this aircraft. So, its capacity is 2, I mentioned that. The wingspan is 33 feet 4 inches. That is 10.16 meters. Its max speed is 126 miles per hour. Its cruise speed is 123 miles per hour. The stall speed is 49 miles per hour. Its range is 477 miles. That's 768 kilometers. The ceiling is 14,700 feet. We are taking off at sea level, so we will not get close to that at all. Rate of climb is 715 feet per minute. The rudder, that I'm moving right now, if you can see that. The rudder has 23 degrees of freedom. The elevator has 18 degrees of freedom, but it does have a trim tab which allows for some additional control by the pilot. And as anyone who's ever flown knows, trim tabs are crucial when you get to a cruising altitude for taking the workload off the pilot. I am doing this in real time and under current weather conditions at this airport. So hopefully that won't come back to haunt me. I can see here I do have a slight crosswind. As you can see, the windsock. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. That windsock right over there is showing that I do have a crosswind. I could put on the automated weather system, but I doubt any of you want to hear that, because unless you're a pilot, it is just a lot of information that pilots know how to decode, but just the average person watching this will not care to hear. All right, so the airport that we're taking off from, KSUT, is located in Brunswick County. On my sectional chart, which is the Charlotte sectional chart, it is the lowest airport on the chart. It is actually half cut off because it goes down to South Carolina for their chart, which means that I will just be flying more to the northern area of the controlled airspace. Even though it doesn't have a tower, it is still controlled airspace. And without further ado, let's get down to taking off and flying this thing. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comment section below. All right, so just to go through my before takeoff, elevator trim, good. Avionics all looks good. Flaps are at 0. Carburetor heat is off. We're going to check that. So here is the carburetor heat. A quick rundown on these controls. So this aircraft does have carburetor heat. Anytime that you are coming in for a landing or below a RPM threshold, which I know on my Cessna is like 2,000 RPMs, but when you're coming in for a landing and you're decreasing power, you always put carb heat on. There's something I've read that the low pressure caused in the carburetor can actually mean that ice can form, even in conditions where ice would not form just at normal temperature. So, obviously we do not have carb heat on takeoff because the carb heat does rob some of the energy from the motor, so we don't want that during takeoff. Mixture is set to rich, confirmed. Takeoff and departure brief. Let's go through our briefings real quick, shall we? So, safety briefing. Seatbelt shoulder harnesses should be worn during takeoff and landing, and really throughout most of the flight. Air vents are located to the top here, so up here and up here, those are your air vents. Fire extinguisher is typically located in the middle between the seats and can be used for an in-cabin fire. We should always be scanning for traffic at all times, and at certain phases of the flight, I will require a sterile cockpit, which means I'll do a hand signal, and that means no talking, no distractions. Typically, this is going to be during takeoff or during landing, or when air traffic control is providing us with information. Any questions? No? Okay, great. All right, then. Well, let's announce that we are actually going to get off this runway, and we are going to depart north.
Kilo Sierra Uniform Tango Traffic Cessna Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra taking off runway 5 north departure.
All right, and we're going to smoothly adjust the throttle. And we want to hold it on that center line as much as possible. So as we can see, airspeed is alive. Yeah, not okay. So now we are at VR. So we have come up. That crosswind is giving me a little bit of problems, but now we are climbing out. Climb out from memory was about 63. So I'm doing my best to maintain runway heading, but I know I'm not doing a great job right now. But we are going to continue to climb out at 63. Oh, starting to get a little slow, so we pitch down a little bit and try to get up to a reasonable altitude. Just to show you what this looks like from the outside. There we go. Hey, I'm not doing terrible. That runway is still underneath me. And even though that wind is trying to blow me a little bit, we are climbing out at 500 feet per minute, and we're going to be turning to the north right now as we've hit 700 feet. Well, we're at 700 feet now, and so we are going to depart to the north.
Wilmington approach Cessna Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra is type Cessna 152.1 miles northeast of Kilo Sierra Uniform Tango 700 feet. Request flight following.
So what's fascinating about that is
Cessna Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Wilmington approach. Squawk 6241.
Squawk 6241 Cessna X-Ray Golf Sierra.
okay. Hopefully my co-pilot will take care of that. 6241 squawking. What's fascinating, if you look at a sectional chart, is that this airport, when you take off and you head to the north, you are almost immediately in Wilmington's radar zone. So Wilmington has kind of a unique airspace. It was going to be classified as Class F airspace, or it had a different name for us here in the United States, but it basically denotes an airspace which is radar monitored, but is not controlled airspace in terms of I don't have to abide by everything that the tower tells me to do. And Wilmington, I believe, has a pretty large radius. I don't have my sectional chart right next to me, but it is kind of unique. You don't find it very often. It was a trial that the FAA was thinking about using, and apparently it just never really went anywhere. So all right, I feel like we have climbed up it here a little bit, so I'm going to back off on my throttle. And we're just going to be checking our gauges here. Just a quick rundown, since I'm now high enough that I don't really have to worry about the wind kicking me around. So, and I'll try not to point with my mouse. I'll try to use some kind of highlighting. Well, I am going into a cloud, so that would not be my desired result because I'm going to lose visibility. So let's get back under this cloud. So to descend, as you notice, I just pulled my throttle, and because you never want to descend with throttle on, that's a great way to overspeed the aircraft. If you look on the far left, you'll see that I'm right at the cusp of the safe cruising speed for this. Yellow is only safe in straight and level flight under ideal conditions. So here. So from left to right, top to bottom, we have our airspeed indicator. We have our artificial horizon, which you're going to see move as I now go into a bank. And we have a clock in the middle. Next, we have our altimeter. That tells us how high we are above mean sea level. And the altimeter is influenced by barometric pressure. So if a weather system moves through, if the pressure changes, then you must recalibrate to whatever the pressure is Otherwise, you will have a false reading on your altimeter, and that can be very, very bad. It can result in disastrous situations. All right, I'm going to add a little more throttle. Now, the gauges that look like a plus sign, that has to do with IFR, so I'm not going to cover those right now. So down to the second row, starting from the right, is my vertical speed indicator. It's showing that I'm climbing, again, at about 500 feet, which I want to stay under these clouds, so we're going to back that down a little bit, and now you can see I'm descending. To the left of it is my compass, I'm using the wrong word right now, so this is my compass right up here. And this is my heading indicator. There we go. So my heading indicator is a gyroscopic instrument, and therefore it can build up some errors over time. It's called precession. However, the magnetic compass has its own set of potential errors, but they mostly occur when you are accelerating, decelerating, or when you are turning. The compass has a tendency to, I'll say, lag behind the appropriate setting. So the compass is good to reference in straight and level flight, and you check that against your heading indicator, and then if you've been doing a lot of maneuvers and your heading indicator has deviated, you would then just update your heading indicator to match your compass. And then on the far left, that is my turn indicator, and it also shows my inclinometer, which tells me if I'm yawing or not. So that was me with the rudders, and you can see that little ball moved. Don't do that in a real airplane. But to give you an idea, if I go into a bank, you see how it starts to move. So I'm then gonna, a little too much there. I step on the ball, and here, let me try it again. All right, so step on the ball. Now I'm in a good coordinated turn. So come out of that a little bit. But the goal is to keep that ball in the middle so that you have a coordinated turn at all times. I will say, compared to the Cessna 152 in real life that I fly often, this one seems to be a little, I'll say, more sensitive. So that rudder was much more sensitive than what I would have expected. And the controls feel a little more sensitive, but that could simply be the weather conditions today that is causing some of that. A few things that pilots are always going to scan for is you're going to be checking your fuel quantity, and you're going to be checking your oil temperature and your oil pressure. But of course, you don't spend more than a fraction of a second staring down at the gauges. As a VFR pilot, and I'm climbing again, as a VFR pilot, you are going to be keeping your eyes outside the cockpit for the vast majority of your flight. One bad habit that a flight simulator can do to anyone who is interested in learning how to fly, either recreationally or professionally, is in a flight simulator, because you don't have the feedback of feeling the gravity effects. You don't feel the thrust. You don't feel wind hitting you from a direction. It tends to cause us to rely on those instruments. So a lot of flight sim pilots, myself included, will have a tendency to focus down on the instruments a lot more than we should. And when we get into training, especially as we learn VFR, that's a habit we have to quickly break and start to make sure that we're flying the airplane by using points of reference. So for example, the horizon here is my point of reference. I can see about where the horizon is located to my cowling is about level, right? I'm not gaining, I'm not descending, it's just where it needs to be. Now if I do this, okay, now my horizon is way down and I'm descending. Okay, and if I do this, now I am climbing. The horizon is down below, right where my cowling is, and you can see that I am performing a climb. So let's get back up to 1,000 feet and let's land this aircraft. So I'm just trying to think of if there's any more stuff that I can go over. So we completed our takeoff. We're at cruise. We set our, and I'm sorry, I started to talk and didn't go through my checklist like I should. So transponder has been set correctly. Throttle was full forward. Engine instruments all looked good. We performed the rotation at the correct speed. We climbed out at VY, which is about 61 to 70 knots, and 61 knots, 70 miles per hour. Flaps have been retracted. I did a takeoff with no flaps. And now as we are heading over the ocean, a place where any pilot will tell you they prefer not to be, we are in cruise. So power should be between 2,000 and 2,700 RPMs. So let me find my RPM gauge real quick. Oh, there it is. So there's my RPM gauge. And as you can see, we're basically right at that 2,000 mark. So that's good. And I'm going to go ahead and start turning back. I'm climbing again just a little bit. So let me back off on my power. And trim, we would normally set that. I'm not going to adjust the trim for this short of a flight. And mixture, we would normally lean the mixture. I can lean it out just a little bit, as you see there with that red bar coming out. But leaning out the mixture is, I mean, it's something that you definitely want to do. Otherwise, it can result in fouling of the engine, which can have some pretty detrimental problems. So you always want to lean for taxi, and then you do your engine run up where you go back to full mixture, and then you definitely want to lean once you're at your cruising altitude. The higher you are, the more you will lean the fuel mixture because you don't have as much air. It's a fuel-air ratio that you are working with, and less air there is, the less need for fuel. Otherwise, you end up having too much fuel that doesn't get combusted. So, wind just blew me a little bit there. All right, so we skip ahead a little bit here to landing procedure. And all right, so mixture adjust for smooth operation. Ride a little bit. Altimeter set. Hopefully this has been a short enough flight. We didn't have a weather system move through, but I would normally check the automated weather system to make sure that my altimeter is set correctly. Throttle as desired. All right, and then in a few moments here, we're going to be going to the before landing checklist. So approach briefed, seatbelt secure, fuel selector valve will be set to both. That is usually right down here somewhere. If let's see here, so we're probably going to be slowing down. So I'm going to go ahead and pull carb heat out. Where did my airport go? There it is. All right, and trim set for landing. Yeah, we do have some gust of wind here. All right. That wind was fighting me there just a little bit. All right, so for a normal landing, with flaps full, we're going to be coming in between 52 and 60 knots. The stall speed, as we mentioned before, I believe is 49. And where's my runway? There it is. Okay, so let's announce that we are going to land. I don't know why you're telling me to squawk something. I don't want to talk to you, Wilmington. So I would like it if my co-pilot would change me back. I don't want Wilmington approach. Well, my co-pilot does not feel like following proper procedures, and he is not going to announce on Unicom. So normally we would announce our estimated distance from the airport, our intention that we are going to land. We would announce if it is a touch and go landing or a full stop landing, and then as we enter the pattern, we will announce where we are in the pattern. At all airports, unless otherwise noted on the sectional chart, it is a left-handed pattern. So for this one, I'm going to not really do much when it comes to pattern work, only because it requires a lot of looking out the windows, which in a real airplane is very, very easy to do. And to be quite honest, in VR, so if you have a VR headset that you use in Microsoft Flight Simulator, it is phenomenal. It's very, very easy to fly the pattern perfectly, know where your runway is. There she is. And you can execute basically a perfect perfect pattern with your downwind base and leg turns, turning exactly when you would in real life. In this mode, because I'm on a screen, it's just, looking out my window to see if the airstrip is 45 degrees behind me before I turn to the base leg is a little cumbersome, and with wind blowing me around, obviously it takes my eyes off the airplane a little longer than I would like to. So, pardon me, anyone watching this that is a stickler for regulations, because I will not be announcing everything, nor am I going to be probably entering the pattern correctly. But either way, we're going to give this a go. So as we can see, my airspeed is getting a little, well, now it's speeding back up because I'm descending. Okay. My airspeed was about at 60. All right, there's my runway. You would normally enter at a 45-degree angle to the downwind leg, which looks kind of achievable from here. So, it would be great if the game actually showed me here. Can I do a point of interest? Yeah, okay, we're about 1 mile away. All right. So, entering downwind leg. Starting to lose a little more altitude than I need to, so I'm going to increase that throttle. Pull up a little bit. Generally speaking, patterns are always going to be at 1,000 unless otherwise stipulated. But let's see. I'm actually going to raise my nose here because I want to bleed off my airspeed, because I want to get within the flaps, and I'm going to go ahead and put my first degree of flaps in. Now, when we put in flaps, that increases our drag, but also increases the descent rate, so we can come down steeper onto a runway the more flaps that we have. Generally speaking, though, when you put flaps in, let's see if it'll do this. I just put my second notch. It'll typically cause the nose to pitch down a little bit, which is very important to know, because obviously you need to be able to compensate for that. All right, where's my runway? There she is. Okay, so I'm doing a very sloppy base leg turn here, but my airspeed is still where it needs to be. I'm going to go ahead and add full flaps, and probably going to need to do a little bit of a steeper turn. And I'm watching that airspeed there because we are right at 60. If I get any slower than this, then I'll want to definitely put some throttle in, because you never want to flirt with stall speed, especially when landing. All right, so next we want to line up on the center line, which we are doing right now. And, well, a little bit, let's get back over there. I am still going to be fighting a crosswind, which was blowing from my right to my left, so I'm going to try to aim for a little bit to the right side of the runway, figuring that that cross breeze is going to move me more towards that center line. If I was flying a real airplane, I'd be doing my normal crosswind, which is aileron one direction, opposite rudder, but I'm going to go ahead and kill power, so we've made the threshold. And now we're just going to let her settle in. All right, boom, there we go. So, and we have touched down. All right, so let me go ahead and let me clear. See if I can slow down. Clear this. Whoop. Yeah, I probably should have slowed down more. Luckily, there's no one at tower to tell me that I went over on the grass. All right, so slow way down. All right, so flaps fully back up. We would thank tower for their assistance, and we would tune the ground. And let's just go back to my checklist here. I always find checklists, especially at landing, to be somewhat humorous, because I don't know if you noticed there, but when you are turning base and final approach, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of factors that a pilot has to take into consideration. So thumbing through a checklist My instructor would kill me if I said that. So checklists are great. I'll keep it that way. All right, so we have completed the landing, and we are now, so we don't have to worry about a balked landing. Balked landing, if I was on that final approach, if that crosswind had really been pushing me, and I knew I wasn't going to make, the runway center line, or just anything at all just seemed out of place on the landing, we would immediately execute what's known as a go-around. So go-around is full throttle, then slowly retract the flaps. The important part is slowly. Slowly retract the flaps one increment at a time, and then you simply announce that you are going around, and then you get back into the pattern, and you come back and you try your landing again. Probably one of the most important tenets of aviation safety is that go-arounds are good, and you are never penalized for a go-around. At the end of the day, aviation is the safest mode of transportation in the world. Aviation in general is incredibly safe, and safety is built into every aspect of aviation. So we respect that, and we are always going to keep it that way. Okay, after landing, so runway we've cleared. Ground, we would tune the ground if we had a tower. Throttle, okay, carb heat can go back to cold. So if you recall correctly, I put my carb heat in. We can now take that carb heat back off. Looks like, excuse me. Looks like I didn't burn that much fuel. The Cessna 152, similar to the Cessna 172, has two fuel tanks in the left and right wing that are gravity fed. And, all right, so mixture should be rich. Flaps are up. Transponder set to standby. There we go. Transponder standby. The pitot tube heat off. We didn't need pitot tube heat because it's the middle of summer. Lights as required. I used the beacon light, and that was all that is required for this flight. Taxi clearance, there's no one to obtain it from. So next, you just find a parking space in general aviation, and you begin to tie down the airplane. So, do a little bit of taxiing here. This is pretty much the end of the video. I thank you all for watching. Let's get outside here. Let's take a good look at this aircraft as I do some taxiing. So as you can see, Cessna 152, pretty nice aircraft. Definitely a must-have for someone just getting into aviation, whether it's your first time ever flying, or if... Do I have landing lights on? Hold on. There we go. Yep, I did have landing lights on. Especially if you just want to experience, what it is to fly and figure out if aviation is something that you want to pursue. This aircraft is wonderful. Also, many first-time full pilots will buy a Cessna 152 because the cost of owning one is very, very reasonable for aircraft. If you've ever done any research on aircraft, they start off at very expensive, and they go up to numbers that I don't know how anyone can afford. So the Cessna 152, I think, comes in on average. Now, they've been out of production for a while, so no more are being made, and no more will ever be made. But I believe that their going rate is probably between, and this is before the recent, stuff going on with the economy. They usually run between like 33,000 and maybe 48,000. Depending on how many hours they have on the engine, what the maintenance has been on them, and what maintenance they're due for. But all in all, when it comes to total cost of ownership, if you just want an airplane and you just want to fly, this right here is a phenomenal aircraft for the joy and love of aviation. So I think that kind of covered everything. I did not feel like going through emergency protocols for this aircraft, just because that is something that, your instructor will hammer into you. And so I've completed my checklist. I've gone through all the facts that I wanted to share with you. And so, in summary, Cessna 172, a phenomenal aircraft for the first-time flyer, or for someone who wants to get into aviation and get their private pilot's license, that initial license, in the most affordable way. The the cost of these to rent per hour with the instructor tends to be a little bit cheaper than a Cessna 172. And I personally have never flown this aircraft, so I can't speak to my experience in it. I've kind of gotten not only spoiled by the Cessna 152, but the flight school that I fly out of has a number of Cessna 172s. So there are ones that I love, and then there's one that I absolutely love. It has a glass cockpit and a high performance engine, and then there's two of them that are just not ones that I would ever choose to fly, only because of some of the more archaic controls. Like, let's see if I can find the flaps. Okay, so this one has a good notched flaps. So you can see here, you've got the notches in increments. That's what I'm used to when it comes to a flap lever. One of the oldest Cessnas I've seen literally has a toggle switch. You toggle it down to go down, and you toggle it up to go back up. And that's just not what I want at all. I don't want to have to stare out of my window to see how many degrees of flaps I have in. So I'm going to show you that again. So let's see if I go with, I don't know, let's do 30 degrees of flaps. And notice the game does it in percentage, but that's not really how flaps are measured. They're usually like 10, 15, 30, and some aircraft have more than that. But you can now see that the flap is lowered. And I believe that's it, folks. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see any other aircraft, or if you found this interesting, or if this maybe inspires you to take up the joy of aviation. This area that I flew out of in Brunswick County does have a flight school, and they have these aircraft. So I don't know the name of the flight school, or else I would give them a shout out. But hopefully, anyone watching this will pique your interest. You might enjoy checking out the Cessna 150 as your first general aviation experience. As always, folks, I appreciate you watching the video. Give it a like if you enjoy this content. It actually helps out a lot with YouTube and just, the nature of what it is to make videos, and if it's worth it to make videos. And I will see you all in the next video. Take care.